I want to introduce you, everyone, to Martin. Say hello, Martin.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
So Martin is, you can see a picture of him. If you can see the screen, hopefully, you can see a picture of him. Martin spoke at what, I think it was a couple of years ago at Agency Summit. And he spoke about the power of the mind, and a few different people recommended Martin to me, and I was a bit, I'll be honest, like I was a bit kind of worried when I got Martin to speak at my event, because I thought I've got all these agency leaders there, and I like to be quite practical and give people really crunchy stuff that they can do, and Martin's there. He's going to be talking about like the power of the mind, and I thought, oh, is this going to be really woolly and fluffy? And like I was just a bit worried about it. And when he got up there, like it was really interesting. Like people really tuned in, and so I really have a lot of respect for Martin. He's someone who works with a lot of different agency leaders, helping them like almost like untangle the wires of their thinking, and I thought the people who would work with you, Martin, I don't know if I've told you this before. I thought the people who work with you would sort of be the kind of like people in roll necks with like fedoras and sort of quite the type of people. But actually, like you work with Dan from Studio Output, and Dan's a very very smart person. When he speaks, people listen. But he's not someone you would have thought would have like a coach like you, but he's really like respectful of you. And he said that when he was interviewing a lot of different people to work with, and he said Martin was different because he didn't have like a kind of PowerPoint slide that he showed me. I think he just sort of said, well, my proposal is what I'm telling you now, like you either want to do it or you don't. And he sort of had a lot of respect for you. So Martin is a great person to pay attention to. And what I thought it would be good to talk about is just what Martin's work is and how it kind of applies to the current crisis we're facing now. Martin, could you give us a little bit of a flavour of what you do, first of all?
Yeah, sure. So I'm quite old, and so for the first half of my career, for 15 years or so, I was in the technology sector. Very pragmatic, very results-driven environments, sales management, general management, running a small business, and so on. Had an early midlife crisis, and for the last 20 years, I've been coaching business leaders, and I coach business leaders individually, and I coach teams. And what was always fascinating to me was how easy it was to be dysfunctional. That's a sort of negative way of putting it, but it's pretty hard, this world, in particular at the moment. But it's hard to be effective. It's hard to be a really great leader. It's a challenge to work effectively as a team running an agency or a company. Yeah, there's lots of complexity that comes in when human beings are because we're human, we're not robots. So for the last 20 years, I've been on this side of the fence, coaching, challenging, inspiring, exploring how to help individuals and teams be more effective in how they work. Along the journey, I've done lots and lots of work in agencies. I'm not sure why. I like them, or they like me, or a bit of both. We seem to sort of work quite well, sort of, I guess, dynamic, young, except I'm not young, but you know what I mean. The thing that I've focused on significantly over the last 6 or 7 years is the psychological element. And if you think of your roles, and by the way, this conversation, here is, I really invite you to, I want to engage you. I want you to really think about yourself during this. So I know how easy it is on our webinar to be popping up emails or whatever, etc. But I want to talk to you and have you really reflect about your own experience in detail, so that it can be useful and you can get some nuggets for yourself out of it.
Yeah.
So the bit I'd like you to reflect about as we're having this is, look at the role the mind plays in performance. So let's forget the coronavirus. We haven't even come on to that bit yet, but in normal times, the mind is playing a significant role. The mind plays a significant role in the thinking that you have about yourself. You might have some thinking that you're good, or you might have some thinking that you lack confidence, or you might have some thinking that says, you know, you're good in large groups or not good in large groups. The mind plays a role in how you think about the economy or how you think about your company. The mind plays a role in how you work with others, whether you like them or dislike them, trust them or don't trust them. The mind is constantly coming up and influencing and shaping how you show up in the world. Now, sports people sort of caught on to this maybe 20, 30 years ago, because all the top sports people now have a sports psychologist. So they're working with someone because they realize that being at the top of their game in any moment requires them to not let their mind get in the way of themselves. So in those critical moments when they're doing a backhand or serving for the match or playing cricket for the last over or doing a penalty in a cup final, they realize that the mind being in a peak performance state is absolutely critical. So what I've realized is along the way that it's no different for you as business people in business. It's no different for any of us. How effective I am with my mind, with my, at home, in my business, doing what I do, leading others, etc., is so fundamental to my effectiveness in life, but also my happiness in life. And the relevance of that to today is, of course, the coronavirus. It's not, of course there is a medical issue going on in the world, but the main issue going on right now is our own psychology and our own thinking. So the purpose of this whole webinar is to explore and learn about the mind in a different way, to help you observe what's been going on in your mind, to enable you to unlock a more effective way of being during this phase.
Yeah, let me just ask you, Martin.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
When you talk about the mind, like, what do you mean? Like, because the mind is not something you ever think about. Like, it's just like I live in my head, and like my mind is what I am. Like, what? But you seem to be describing the mind as something separate to you, if that makes sense.
Yes. So the mind is the portal through which you experience the world. So really, yes, there's this thing I'm calling the mind, and the mind is how you experience the current situation and all the feelings and the thinking that comes along with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
So sorry, just to say then, so at the moment, you can be experiencing significant anxiety. You can be experiencing calm. You can be experiencing an opportunity to step up or do things differently. You can be experiencing all sorts of things. And it's through the mind, it's the mind that's having you experience that.
Yeah. And there's you read a lot of things saying like, in times of, in times of great challenge is the greatest opportunity. And people say things like the Chinese symbol for danger is the same symbol as the symbol for like opportunity, and like that's all very well, but like unless you are in that, can put yourself in that frame of mind, that you can't really kind of seize on any opportunity at all.
Right. Exactly. And I think it's a really great point. So is we can read a phrase like that and go, well, yeah, you know, this is a time of a great opportunity. Yet, unless something shifts inside of us, it's very easy just to be experiencing anxiety at the moment. So we can read a phrase like that, but it's how do we deeply embed a phrase like that so that something shifts inside us and we are, and I've been on this journey myself in the last 3 weeks, is I found myself go on this journey of, oh my God, what on earth is happening to the world? And what's going to happen to me or my family? What's going to happen to my income? What this, what that? What about the bigger things in like, what on earth are we doing as a society to get to this stage? So I've been experiencing myself go on that journey. But what I'm hoping to help people on this call with is to explore what's going on, but to get to a place where the things that you just referred to actually can become a way of operating in this time.
Cool. So we've got like a bit of we were sort of having a chat about how to run this conversation, and we kind of have a little plan that we're sort of navigating through, but please do chip in, and you know, if you have a question or an observation, do that. I just want to kind of go to Carl quickly, because I don't think I've introduced you to him, Martin, but Carl is
Hi.
our artist for today. Could you just give us a bit of a preview of what you've got on your screen?
Yeah, sure. It's early stages, but
yeah,
I'll share it now.
Carl's over in Peckham. If I stop my sharing, yeah.
So I'm doing some visual recordings of the conversation.
Yeah, so we'll have a look at your screen in a sec.
Yeah.
Are you looking good there, Martin?
I like the collar and the
you like it? You got a bit of
jacket.
stubble there, yeah.
Yeah, I just added the stubble.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. I like the pottery metaphor. That's brilliant. So Carl's going to be sort of scribbling away as we go through this, and we'll kind of just pick on him a little bit as and when we need a distraction. So yeah, thanks, Carl.
No worries.
So Martin, we were kind of looking at what to talk about and how to sort of navigate through this, and tell us a little bit about, so we've sort of covered who you are, we've talked a little bit about why the mind is very important during this coronavirus crisis. Should we come on to sort of the key elements of what you teach next?
Could I just, would you mind me jumping back a little bit and just sure. There's 5 key things I think that are critical right now for agencies, for whatever level in the agency you are, for anybody, human being actually, but certainly in a business and certainly in agencies. And I'd just like to say, so why do we need to have a mind working effectively? Well, we need 5 things. I said 3. The first thing we need is peace of mind. We need to be in a place where we're not getting caught up in the noise that's going on and the anxiety that creates. For our own mental well-being, we've got to have peace of mind. Number 2 is leadership. Whether we're leaders of our agency or whether we're leaders in our family or or whether we're just being a leader, even if we're not just of other people, we need to access leadership that is calm and centered and strong and supportive of people that wherever they're at. Number three is we need focus. With all this noise going on, you know, and we switch on the telly too much, or we do this, or we've got people calling or texting us, we need the ability to focus on what we need to focus on. Number four is we need to be able to get clarity. So there are some difficult decisions to make right now. There are all sorts of things going on, especially if you're running an agency. There's going to be all sorts of really difficult, emotive decisions that you have to make over this week and these next couple of months. And so getting clarity on how you make those decisions is number four. And number five is creativity. Now, I know your agencies, so you know you are in the creative sector, so it is wonderful. But this is an opportunity in world history where we need creative thinking beyond what we've ever known. We need to let go of existing thinking entirely to reinvent all sorts for ourselves, for our businesses, for society. So for me, the purpose of what we're doing here is to help people unlock the mind to work most effectively in those five areas.
Yeah, someone said the other day, it's a bit like, you know, we as agencies, we sort of go around and we try and find a little crack in the pavement where we can kind of plant our seeds. And now, like, you know, there's been an earthquake and the pavement has been torn apart, and there's fertile soil everywhere. And it's a bit easy to be I'm conscious of being quite trite about stuff like that, because you do see these LinkedIn motivational things that are like, you know, and I know sometimes it's hard to focus on that, but I think our job as leaders is to remain in that space, because your employees and the people around you are going to be going on Facebook, and most people are not, you know, most of us are not equipped to deal with a kind of change like this. But we, as agencies, a lot of us spend our time talking about disruption and you know, whole industries being turned upside down, and you know, now we're kind of having to eat our own dog food. So yeah, I think what you're going to be talking about is really useful. So should we go into the go to the next?
So do you want me to move on to?
Yeah. So Martin and I are actually now we've got this plan here, so we're kind of navigating it together. Do you want to go into the fourth bit of this, of our the kind of the key stuff, the key bits?
Sure. So just say something I haven't said yet, which is, so we specialize in teaching people about the mind, and that's what I'm going to, we call it quality of mind. And quality of mind is, you know, when you're operating from a high quality of mind, you're working effectively to achieve all the things that I've already talked about. When you're operating from a low quality of mind, of course, then you drop into frustration or anger or judgment or upset or anxiety or whatever else. And that takes away your effectiveness. So what I'm coming on to, and we do webinars on this, we do half-day workshops, but we also do 3 or 4 day retreats where we're really immersing people in. I'm giving a flavor of what the sort of things that we touch on I'm going to go into now. So the first thing I like, I'm going to invite you all to close your eyes, actually, apart from Carl, of course. But I'm just going to ask you to close your eyes for a moment, and I want to mention the word flow to you. And my question to you is, when are you in flow? And what do I mean by flow? And some people might know it as the flow state. And you might think of a river actually when you think of the word flow, because a river operates in flow. It operates naturally. It operates effortlessly. It operates efficiently. When it's weaving its way around things, it's just in this flow state. And sports people call this being in the zone. So being in the zone when I'm scoring a penalty in a cup final and somehow the ball just miraculously hits the top corner, or because I'm older than quite a lot of you, I remember when Johnny Wilkinson did this drop goal in the 2003 World Cup final, and there he had seconds to win the game, and he was in flow, right? In that moment, the ball came back to him and he did this drop kick and it went through the posts. So what I'm going to invite you guys to do is to access a time or times when you are in flow. And think now that might be when you are, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to just reflect on that. Actually, I'll give you a bit of silence first. So when are you in this flow state? And it could be at work. It could be when you're working on a creative project or selling to a client or presenting. It could be at home when you're with friends or family. It could be when you're out for a run or whatever. Just like you to.
Music for, are we not meant to be answering? Sorry, Matt.
You're not. No.
Okay. And you mentioned your eyes closed.
I just want you to drop into that state beyond those questions, really, to access the feeling of what that feels like. So I'm going to open it out to everyone, if I may, Ian, just to say, how would you describe the experience of that state? Just give me one word to describe how you describe it.
And you guys can put this in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak. Yeah, Jason saying present. Yeah. Rob saying the answers fall into place naturally. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Catherine saying focused. I think for me, you sort of lose track of time as well. You don't really, notice.
Yeah.
Rob saying effortless.
Yeah. So energizing. Yeah, really good point, John. So I'm going to focus on two things here. The first thing about flow state is the experience of being in it. And then I'm going to focus on what is available to us when we are in this state. So the first point is, what's our experience of it? Well, some of you said some things there, right? Is whatever you're doing in flow state happens effortlessly. It's not like, so when I interview the guy that took the penalty amazingly, and I say to him, well, how did you do that? He goes, well, I don't know. I wasn't really thinking. Because we sort of access this amazing autopilot where we're doing it effortlessly. We're not really thinking about it in a sort of cognitive, we're not really trying at all. So there's an effortlessness to it. I think John said energizing, right? There's a richness to the experience when we're in flow state. There's a positive energy. There's a richness to the experience. And you said, Ian, timeless. So when we're in flow state, time disappears, and I'm sure you all have had that experience when you were having a great evening down the pub, when we could go to pubs. You were having a great evening down the pub, and before you know it, you look at your watch and like it's time to go home, and you're like, oh wow, where did that time go? Or you're having a great meeting, a creative brainstorm, and before you know it, you look at your watch and an hour and a half's gone by. So there's this timelessness to it, because the cognitive part of the mind shuts down.
Yeah, and people have different words for this, don't they? Like artists sometimes call this, or writers call this, like the muse, you know. And it's almost like Stephen Pressfield, this author. He writes a lot about he's a novelist, but he writes about work, the process of writing as well. He talks about it being this portal that you go through into this sort of, he calls it like the thin space, where like ideas come to you and things are just suggested. And he says one of your jobs as someone who's creative is to be able to go through that portal and sort of transcend both worlds. And if you look at like early interview, he says if you look at early interviews of like David Bowie and the Beatles, like there's always a guy on the sofa asking them, you know, where do you get your ideas from? What is this? And they sort of laugh and they say silly things, or they goof around, and people think they're being quite rude, but actually they're responding to the question in that way because to them it's obvious, like they have no idea where this stuff, where their ideas come from, and it's because
wonderful
they're in that flow state, you know.
Yeah, so the four ways that you've just coming on to the fourth one, the four ways that we talk about this state. One is it's timeless. There's a timelessness to the experience. Two is there's a richness to it. Three is there's an effortlessness to it. And four is there's a selflessness to it. So as you've just talked about there, Ian, when we're in this state, actually the self, so when we're actually in the state, the self disappears. And so when asked, where did that idea come from? We're like, well, I've no idea. Or how did you do that presentation so well? You're like, well, I don't know. Because the ego, the self collapses, and we're left in this autopilot state where actually me, Martin, gets out the way. And so the next bit to come on then is, the key thing to look at is when we are in flow state, we access our full potential. So the 5 things that I talk about earlier, peace of mind, great leadership, clarity in decision making, focus, creativity. We need those 5 things in abundance right now for the next couple of months to navigate through the storm as best as we possibly can. And so the key really is to, when we're in flow, we access the best of us, and that can be the best to score a penalty, the best to navigate difficult decisions, the best to be a great leader. Flow state can show up in whatever form it needs to be your potential in any moment, doing anything.
Yeah, and I want to pause on that a little bit, because a lot of agency leaders have hobbies, or they have activities, you know, that are sort of like designed to do, whether they know it or not, I think they're designed to kind of get them into that flow state. So there's a guy I know, he races fast cars, or they you know, they'll do some kind of sport, or they'll like Miles at Waypoint does like ultra marathons, doesn't he? Like runs across the Gobi Desert. You know, a lot of these things I think are because they solve problems while they're doing this. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you want us to be able to access that anytime, not just when we're running across the Gobi Desert.
Yes, and I have worked with some athletes actually on this, right? Because And the classic thing is, okay, well, the big question is, if we all agree flow state feels pretty damn amazing and produces pretty damn amazing results, then the only question is, how do I get in it more? Yeah. Now, the traditional route is to go, wow, okay, well, I worked with a fencer actually a year or so ago, and he used to have 2 hours of routine that he did before he did one of his fights. I think that's what they call it.
Battle. Oh yeah, probably. Fights.
Battles.
It's not a battle, but whatever.
Yeah.
We should find that out.
And the problem is, you can have a routine of 2 hours of, well, I must get there earlier and I must do my breathing exercises and my stretches, etc., etc. But he used to find that you can do all of that and still not end up in flow state. Sometimes it would work and sometimes it didn't. And what our teaching is about is different. So I'm suggesting to you all that flow state is our natural state. It's the natural state that exists for all of us. And someone said, Rob Skinner said, answers fall into place naturally. And someone else, Rob Koch said, effortless. So I'm suggesting to you that this state is our natural state in the way that the bird migrating the other side of the world has a natural ability to do that. We have a natural ability to be in this state automatically without the 2 hours of preparation. Sure, you might want to do the 2 hours of preparation, but we're looking at this psychologically. And what I'm saying to you is it's automatically there. There's just one thing that we really need to learn about and master that can prevent us from being in the flow state. And I'd love to hear people's thoughts on what that one thing might be.
What do you think, folks?
Just type away, it'd be good to hear your thoughts. What prevents you from getting in? If there's one thing that prevents us all ever from getting into flow state or accessing this state, what is it?
Yeah, Deep is saying time. Yeah, we've got information overload, thinking.
Right.
That's good, Catherine. Yeah, it's CCTV of myself overthinking. Yeah, that's a good one.
So thank you for all of that. Yeah, right. So I'm suggesting to you there's one thing. There's one thing. And I'm suggesting to you that the only thing that prevents us from being in flow in any moment is thought. So some of you said that, worries. Well, worries is just thought, right? Noise from people. Well, what I'm really looking at is what's going on inside you that prevents you from being in flow, and it's thought. So psychologists say that we're having 70,000 thoughts a day. So I'm suggesting to you that you are like a bubble machine. That your whole existence is like a bubble machine, just moment by moment, moment by moment, you're switched on producing bubbles, and I mean thought. So constantly you're just living in a stream of thought. A stream of thought. Every day, every moment, every day, every month, every year, thought coming through. And some of that thought comes along and takes the potential for you to be in flow state away. So if I have a worrying thought of, oh my goodness, Catherine's just disappeared. If my thought goes wild with me and says, oh my goodness, she's left, oh, maybe she didn't like it, or I wonder why she's left, or oh my good, I'm not feeling that great today, or I wonder how this is going. I've never done a webinar before and I can't get feedback from people, or you know, whatever my thought is doing, it has the potential to hijack me. And in the moment that it hijacks me, it knocks me out of my flow state. And my thought can be worrying, my thought can be judging you, my thought can be judging myself, my thought can be creating scenarios of what's going on in the world at the moment and what's going to happen. Whatever thought is doing, it's coming along and it's creating my experience, and with the potential to hijack flow state.
And you were saying like that this is sort of almost like it's the default for human beings, right? Or it should be the default, and we sort of, it's almost like the world doesn't want us to be in that flow state. Like if you look at your phone, you know, there's however many, every app has like a red dot on it. There's just 500 things you've not done. And you know, the economy doesn't want you to be Silicon Valley, and you know, doesn't want you to be in a flow state. So it's almost like you're kind of you're it's a battle to not be in that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the inner journey versus the outer journey, Ian, I think. And is the outer journey is that corona or no corona, there's noise going on out in the world. There's stuff going on. There's a virus. There's an economic situation. There's a problem with an employee. There's losing a client. There's winning a client. There's whatever's going on. There's the outside world. But really, the journey of being effective is an inner journey. It's regardless of what's going on. It's how you shift and change your relationship and your understanding of what's going on for you inside to keep you in flow. And that is possible, but it requires learning about this mind in a different way.
Yeah, and can you be in a flow like state? Like, should you be? Are you saying you should be in a flow state all the time? Because I mean, and so two questions. How often do you think you should be in a flow state? And two, like, are you sort of saying thoughts are bad? Because I tend to describe people as, in terms of how they think, like they're a great thinker, or they're so smart. Like, is sort of having like these thoughts bad? Because we sort of tend to trade, and we consider that our biggest asset, the fact that we have such brilliant ideas.
So just one thing really is everything is thought. So even when I'm in flow, I'm actually thinking, right? So I did say earlier, well, there's an absence of thought when flow is going on, but in reality, right, if I'm pitching to a client and I'm in flow state, of course there's still thought going on. I'm picking up what they're saying. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. You know, I'm in flow state, but there's still thought going on. The key distinction we're making here is what is low quality of mind thought and versus high quality of mind thought. And what I'm highlighting as bad quality of mind thought is thought that can hijack you from flow state. So if I'm caught up in thought that has me worry about what's going to happen to an important client, what's going to happen in the, you know, in the next month, if I'm caught up in worrying, if I'm caught up in judging people, that's what I'm calling is low quality thought that we should start to become increasingly aware of.
And do you think becoming aware of it and noticing it is sort of an important step on the journey to reducing it?
Right. So so to answer that, can I come on to the next key element of what I'd like to share
Sure.
here, which we're sort of starting to work on already, right? So what I'm interested in doing is is helping you look at thought separate from being it. We tend to exist. So I want you to imagine that you're like a bubble machine, right? And so maybe just close your eyes for a moment. We'll play with this. So to start off with, I'd like you to just take a couple of deep breaths. Nice deep breath in and breathing out, and just find yourself relaxing for a moment. And I'm going to invite you to see yourself on a beach. Now, I don't know where this beach is. I don't know, maybe it's a beach you've been to before, maybe it's not. But have a look along that beach and notice whether it's sand, what color, whether it's stony. Notice the waves. And notice the warm sun, and feel the warm sun on your back. And notice how you feel on this beach right now. And I'm going to invite you to walk along the beach a little bit, to the left or to the right, you choose. And just walk along slowly and reflectively, enjoying the moment. Just taking some time to look around and see what you see, and enjoying nature. And so, one second, sorry, I've just been disturbed. One sec. Excuse me, would you mind not doing it? Sorry. Thank you, sorry. A beautiful time for my window cleaner to show up.
Really?
So sorry about that, but
I was wondering why your window cleaner was on that beach.
Yeah, so what I'd like you to do is to observe. I'm hoping that some of you were able to picture some things. Now, whatever you pictured is whatever thought and your mind created, right? Hopefully a beach, maybe with sand, maybe with pebbles, maybe with big waves or small waves. And maybe you felt a feeling also. So maybe you felt relaxed, maybe you felt reflective, maybe you felt the warmth of the sun on your back. Now, where on earth did that come from, right? Because actually you're sat in your room, most of you probably sat in your room at home somewhere. And yet a minute ago, you were vividly experiencing something entirely different. So what I'm inviting you to do is to look at the power that thought has. Because thought comes along and creates your experience as it did that beach. And as it creates that experience, with it comes a feeling. And it appears like you are living in reality, but you're not. You're living in an illusion created by thought. And what's happening is that thought's coming along and it's creating your experience moment by moment of the beach, of the client situation, of how you feel about yourself, of the feelings and thoughts you have about Corona, etc., etc., etc. We're living in this bubble machine that's creating our experience. And what I'm sharing with you is not my view of the world. This is what the latest neuroscience says. It's what Einstein has quotes on this. It's what philosophers have talked about for thousands of years. It's actually the same thing that's in ancient wisdom like Hinduism and Buddhism. And the key thing is to start to notice that you're existing within a movie-making machine. So there are some facts going on in the world right now. There's some things happening, yeah. There's a virus. There's some people that are contracting the virus and ending up in hospital, and there's some things happening in the economy. The exchange rate is going up or down, and so on. But the main thing we're looking at is the movie-making machine that you've got, that then is creating that as your experience. Because along comes opinions and beliefs and imagination and some other things that I'll talk about here. So the opinion comes along and says, oh no, you know, I don't want it to be this way. I think it should be different. I've got some beliefs that say, you know, this shouldn't be happening. This is a worrying time. I need money and I'm not going to have money, etc., etc., etc. And so what happens is thought comes along in the form of beliefs and expectations and imagination and judgment, and creates this experience that I live in that feels massively real. And this is what then knocks me out of being in flow.
Yeah, and there's a few more. It's in the ancient wisdom. It's also in quite a few current books. Like Cal Newport wrote a book called I think it's called Deep Work, and it's all about how if you can get into this flow state, if you can get into this you know, period of focus, it's almost like an unfair advantage that you have over other people, because most of us are so bad at doing that. And I think I was talking to an agency leader last week actually, and they said that they were pointing to this blog post that said, like, managers sort of tend to schedule things in 1 hour blocks. So like they'll have like a meeting that will last for an hour and then they'll hop to the next meeting. But actually creative people, and I think most of us on this line are you know, creative in the way we run our agencies, we need, like, we can't do that in 1 hour. We sort of need a chunk of focused time where we can get into that flow state, and it's just not recognized by a lot of people. So if you can apply some of these principles, then
Right.
I think it's a huge advantage.
Right. And so the key thing, just to be really clear, is all I'm saying is flow state is available to us in any moment. And the only thing that prevents us from accessing it is thought. And I'm saying thought is just an energy that passes through us that is not the truth. It's actually an illusion. So when I start to shift my relationship to my thinking, I'm more able to automatically operate from flow state.
So how can you quiet the mind though, Martin? How do you stop these thoughts from pinging up like notifications on your phone?
Well, there's two ways. There's the traditional way. So the traditional way is a tactical way. So the tactical way is turn your phone off more. Yeah, go for a walk at lunchtime, exercise, etc., etc. All those things help the system to calm down. The other way, and I'm a believer of both of these ways, and I think you should do both. The other way is to shift your relationship to the thought that's coming in. Because if you live in it and see it as the way things are, then you're immersed. If I'm worried because I saw Carl leave the room a minute ago, or I saw Rob frown a minute ago, if I let thought get carried away with me, it comes in and it hijacks flow. If I see it as just thought, then I let that go, and then I'm more able just to automatically access the flow state.
Yeah.
Can I give people a little exercise now that wasn't on our little sheet, Ian?
Sure.
So what I'm interested to ask people is, and I'm going to give you like a couple of minutes to reflect on this, is where is thought knocking you out of flow state at the moment? So, and let me give you a couple of pointers. This could be, where is your another way of asking you this is, where is your imagination running wild at the moment? Where is your imagination running wild at the moment, and which could be knocking you out of flow state? Where did you have some expectations that have now been thwarted that are knocking you out of this state? Or where have you got some beliefs that have been quashed or frustrated? So I'm just going to give you a couple of moments to write down, just write down all sorts of things about thinking you've got, about work, about self, about money, about society. Just lump a whole load of thoughts.
Hello, Martin. Hello, Stuart here. Hi there. Do we have to put a hand up? It's been a while since I've been on one of these. I think there are symbols to do with bad connection and can have a chat. Just while people are doing that, I've just got a quick question, particularly about flow and how useful it is to make logical decisions. Because in a creative environment, it's really obviously useful. In a sporting environment, it's really useful. But actually, when making decisions, are there techniques to allow you to use it? And I use the example of driving a car. When you're driving a car, you obviously enter a kind of flow state, this kind of autopilot on a long straight road where you don't really remember the last 5 minutes. You've just arrived, but then you get to a roundabout, you have to make a decision, and suddenly your logical brain picks up and you're back there because you have to make that decision. So I'm just wondering if there's any techniques to use this kind of state to help with that.
Okay, that's a great question. Can I come to it? I'm just going to give people another minute to reflect on the exercise, if I may, and then we'll get to that. So, and I'm going to carry on inviting you to look at where is thought hijacking you about your people, about your agency, about the world.
Do you want us to answer yet, or should we?
Okay, yeah, let's do that. And I'm also just looking at some of the other comments coming up in the chat, which is great. So, right. So logical decisions, okay, effectively, there's, you know, as another way of looking at the mind is there's a rational part of the mind, and then there's other elements, the intuitive part of the mind. So Einstein used to talk about the rational mind and the intuitive mind. And actually he's got a beautiful quote that, you know, the gift that we've got is the intuitive mind. Now in reality, we've only got one mind, and we need to take on board data when we're making decisions. We need to take on board data, but ultimately every decision is an intuitive one. So there is a place for the rational mind, but what often happens is, you know, and you'll all know this in creative sector, right, is being a really amazing creative is accessing the intuitive mind. Yes, we need to take on board some data, but we need to use the full power of the mind and its invisible, intangible ability to work something out. And so, to use your example of missing the turning when you're in flow going down, I'd suggest you weren't in flow. On one level, you are in flow if you miss your turning, but on another level, you're actually asleep. So true flow state when you're driving your car is driving automatically, but also having an awareness of what's going on and what the sign says and when you need to pull off.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So it's not quite the same thing. Autopilot isn't quite the same thing as flow in that circumstance.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and the problem with all these words is that we're just using them as pointers. This experience that we have, and it's totally experiential. I'm sort of talking about flow as this all-encompassing state whereby we have the ability to access the full power of the mind in any moment to do whatever we need.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Did you want to bring Robin to this, Martin, or have we got that coming up?
We've got that coming up, I think. Should we just answer? Hello, Rob Coke, by the way. Rob's one of our clients who we're going to talk to a little bit later with. But do we just want to field a couple more questions first?
Yeah,
Ian?
let's do that. Yeah. Jason's point is interesting about are we, you know, is what I do still relevant, and, you know, sort of struggling to, like,
well,
am I just blindly carrying on as usual?
Yes. Well, I mean, there's multiple levels to this, right? So the other thing that thought does, and this is a really, really interesting point, okay, which is thought is driving us. This autopilot that we were just talking about, autopilot is a load being driven by a whole load of subconscious paradigms. So if you look at the hamster wheel or the rat race, well, what's the rat race? Well, the rat race is millions of people running at a certain speed, doing what they do without thinking about it because they think they need to get somewhere or something. So there I am running because I've got some deep-rooted beliefs that say, well, I need financial freedom, or I need to be my own boss, or I need to get promotion because if I get promotion, then I'll get more money. And actually, some of this autopilot is a bunch of thought that's just driving us to operate blindly. And I'd suggest to you that this next couple of months is this really, really powerful opportunity to have some time and some space to really question the thought that's driving you. To go, why am I doing what I do? Where am I going? Where do we live? Why do we live where we live? Why have we got the clients that we've got? And start to peel back, and we start to then, I mean, there's a big question in the psychological world, which is, are we operating with free will? Or are we just an automatic mechanism based upon the thinking that we adopted from our parents or from our childhood or from our early adult life? And this has been a big journey for me. I mean, I've changed significantly over the years because I've peeled back and questioned and said, well, hang on a second, I'm doing it because I think I need to, not because I need to.
Good. Should we go on to yeah, anyone got any
and this is also, sorry, Justine, just to say one other thing on that. This is also the beautiful opportunity to really get creative about what your agency does, how it survives, how it thrives, how it adds most value during this time. This is the beautiful opportunity to question and challenge these existing paradigms. They're all up for grabs in this era.
That's useful, Martin. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah. What about employees? So you can you know, we've talked about kind of the flow state and how there's what our heads are almost like kind of bubble machines, and these thoughts appear and we have no control over them. But getting into being able to access a flow state anywhere is a really valuable tool. What kind of advice do you have for people with employees, and sort of how what this kind of means to them?
Great, good question. And so the thing, we've been doing quite a lot of webinars inside organizations in the last 2 weeks, because and what I'm seeing is that, of course, the way that the human system works is that we're creating our own experience moment by moment. So, you know, the experience that you're having of this crisis, Ian, is totally different to mine, is totally different to Stuart's or Rob's or Catherine's. Mm-hmm. And what you've got in your agency is that's going on. So as a leader, it's really, really critical that you, especially now that we're all working, it's critical that you get inside the realities of the people in your teams. There's 2 things about this. One thing is, some leaders are really quite considered about this and are taking the reality, they're immersed in the reality of it'll all be okay. This is an opportunity. It'll pass by. Calm down. Don't get carried away. Now that's quite a good reality to exist within as a leader, because you're going to be more calm and more measured. But what you've got to make sure you do is get into the realities of those in your team, to make sure you understand how they're feeling, to be able to empathize, to be able to support them and help them most effectively. So it's a really important time to be able to engage staff, build relationship with them and understanding, and not use this distributed time when we're all operating remotely to lose touch with where they're at, and or to lose the ability to connect with them. And of course, the more anxious they are and the less you're aware of that, the less effective they're going to be, the more susceptible they are to illness mental and physical. Can we come on and talk about fear of the unknown, Ian? Or do you want to say anything more about the employee piece?
Let's do that. I'm quite keen to go to Rob as well after that. But let's talk about
right.
Or in fact, what I want to do, sorry, what I've forgotten to. Carl, could we just have a little peep at what you've been up to in your den there? If we just get Carl to share his screen.
Yeah, sorry, bear with me.
It's really funny how artists use like the graphic pen for like everything. Like they don't use the mouse; they sort of use the pen. Like I'm always fascinated to watch people doing that. I just want to see what. Okay, here we go. Excellent.
That's awesome.
I love the bubble machine.
Thank you.
Trying to keep up.
Thank you.
With the,
That's fantastic.
yeah, I guess.
Cool. I'm still the pottery guy is still my favorite bit of that. Cool. Yeah. So thank you, Carl. Martin. Talk to us about the fear of the unknown now.
Right. So I think this is one of the biggest points right now is your mind has the ability, one of the things that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom is our mind's ability to create, to imagine. And everything in existence, from the laptop that you're looking at now, to the pen that you're holding, to the cup that you've got, to the house that you've got, was created through the incredible capacity of the mind to imagine. But there's a very bad part of this. There's a bad downside to this. There's a shadow side to the power of our imagination in that right now, it can go wild and imagine things. And what the ego mind, what the rational mind, Stuart was talking earlier about the logical mind, the logical rational part of our mind wants control, it wants predictability, it doesn't want things to be unknown. And we're existing in a time where there's more uncertainty in the world than ever. We've no idea what's going to happen. No idea on so many levels, financially, economically, personally, societally, in my family, and so on and so on. So the ego's coming along and trying to get control, and it is worried. And this is where the anxiety really comes from, is because the ego's going, oh my God, what might happen? And then the mind's creating scenarios of what might happen and leaving us in a bad state. So the thing I would suggest to you is that actually it's only an illusion that you ever had control anyway. We're not really in control. We just think we were. And the more that we can let go of the concept of that we ever had control, the more we can let go of the illusion of having control or needing to have control, the more we can relax into flow. And so if you think of being on a roller coaster ride, the roller coaster ride is going to go up and down and round. And this particular roller coaster ride is called the coronavirus. Is this new ride that's been created that goes up and down and round and twists and turns more than any roller coaster we've ever been on. And if we're on this roller coaster, not wanting to be on it, trying to control it, worrying about it, we're going to hold on tight and we're going to be extremely stressed for the next couple of months. What we have to do is relax, relax, let go, and trust that the only thing that there is to do is to let go and be on this ride. And some stuff's going to happen, some of it good, some of it bad. But the more that we relax, moment by moment by moment, the less caught up we are in our thinking, the more we are able to be the best we can be on this crazy ride.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Would so we sort of talked a lot about you know, how the mind is something that you can control, and about how your mind is kind of constantly interrupted by thoughts, and you know, we think of our thoughts as being one of our biggest assets, but sometimes there are it's a double-edged sword, you know, because it stops us from they kind of confuse us and keep us distracted, and we sort of like talked a bit about the need for kind of control, and you know, that our ego has this need to think we're always in control. Should we? I just want to kind of bring in. Should we bring in Rob at this point? Because I'm just quite keen to hear from another agency leader, because you've worked with quite a few different agencies, so I thought it'd be good just to actually bring someone else in, so we can hear from what that's actually like, and what, you know, how this all kind of lands. Can we? Are you there? It's Rob Coke, isn't it?
I'm here, yeah.
Cool.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. Yeah.
Perfect.
Martin, I'll let you ask Rob a few questions that will sort of bring out, you know, what this actually looks like in the context of an agency, if that's okay.
Yeah. So Rob, I've worked with Rob and his leadership team over the last couple of years, and we've done a number of things. We've brought this teaching about the mind in as a foundation stone, and then we've done a whole bunch of individual coaching, but also team coaching on top of it over the last couple of year period. I mean, Rob, it'd be great just for you to share a little bit about your journey. I guess, to me, knowing you and the journey you've been on, there's the personal benefit this has been to you. There's how you work, you know, with Dan and Ian and so on, and how it's changed that. Then there's also, it'd be useful to hear from you about, with respect to the current crisis, how you're seeing the world differently, what it's enabling.
Yes. So I suppose it's worth talking about how we first got involved with Martin. We were working with a sort of agency growth partner, and having sort of preliminary meetings with them. And I think what came out of those initial meetings was that as three agency owners, we were all feeling quite trapped by the business in certain ways. And I think that's probably something that a lot of agency owners feel over time, is that sometimes the agency is running you rather than you're running the agency.
Could you just mention the agency that?
Sorry, yeah. So I run Studio Output, but also within our group, we've got a motion studio called Found, and we were also a major partner in an events company called Glug. And sort of since starting work with Martin, we've also spun out a VR studio, which sounds like a lot of things, but it's kind of it's wrapped up in this thinking that one of our partners, Ian, we were all part of Studio Output, so the main sort of brand and design agency. His interest was sort of moving elsewhere. He was interested in VR and sort of starting a new business, but he felt that he was trapped within what we were doing. And we realised from some of those early meetings that there were a lot of things that maybe were going unsaid about how we felt about being in the agency. And so we were introduced to Martin to basically just, I suppose, have a look at ourselves and say, you're making these decisions, you're trying to make these decisions from a really low quality of mind. You're sort of distressed about everything you're doing. Your conversations with each other are not positive, and it's very difficult to make good decisions from that state of mind, because you're very emotional. You're very reactive. You get angry about things.
Had you ever thought about the quality of your mind before? Has that ever occurred to you, really?
For me personally, yes, because over the years I've had sort of different talking therapies and CBT at certain times. So I was probably more aware than the other two that the state of my mind could very much affect the way I was seeing the situation. I think for the other two, maybe it was perhaps more profound, because they hadn't really sort of examined that, and they hadn't really thought that. They would just see their reality as reality. And I think that's part of what Martin's work is really good at, is realizing that actually the reality you see is your reality only. And it's really important to actually find out how other people are thinking, what's going through their mind. And so the initial work that we did, I suppose, to talk about how it helped me from a personal point of view, is realizing that while all those other types of therapy are very helpful, they help you in a certain way of dealing with the content of your thinking. So cognitive behavioural therapy is really useful if you have anxiety about speaking in public, or about meetings that are coming up. If you've got dread about certain things, then CBT is very good at saying, well, let's challenge that thinking. Why do you think like that? What's happened before? What's the evidence? How might you think of it in future? And it's quite an involved process in a way of filling in sort of sheets for yourself and thinking, right, how can I think about this in a different way? And what the quality of mind approach does is it sort of operates at a higher level, in that it's not concerned with the content of your thoughts and trying to give you coping mechanisms for that. It's just recognizing that actually all of it is thought. And it's a very simple thing to say, but it's a very profound thing to realize, that those voices in your head that are telling you that you're not good enough, or you're letting people down, or you're doing things wrong, or you're always getting caught up in the same situation. Once you realize that's just another sort of set of bubbles coming out of your head, it's very easy to ignore them and just say, well, this is irrelevant, you know. And I think to the sort of the bubble machine idea, it's important to recognize that we don't actually generate our own thoughts. Well, we might be able to control our thoughts if we're in a meeting and we have to think about something, we have to put our brain onto something. But actually, a lot of what goes through your mind is just, it appears there. And I think someone else said, well, I think it was you asked, Ian, you know, how do you know what to listen to, or what is a good thought, what's a bad thought? And I think that becomes, it's something that you can start to discern is just when something is a high quality thought or a low quality thought, and what's the emotion that's attached with it. So yeah, highly emotive thinking, it often comes from a place of making sort of a distressed decision, or just having a distressed thought about something, and you can get yourself into much more productive states, like this idea of flow state, by just accepting what comes along a lot more. So, you know, I noticed that people were answering a few questions earlier, like Deepa was saying that anxiety is really distracting her at the moment. John's sort of concerned, you know, his son's got a fever, his mum's at risk, he's got responsibilities as an employer. I think it's very easy at a time like this to get very caught up in kind of what's going on around us, and almost go beyond what's actually happening and start thinking, well, what am I manufacturing in my head about what might happen there, what might happen there? We start to build thoughts upon thoughts upon thoughts, and we get to a point where actually what we're concerned about is not what's actually happening, it's what we think might happen as a result of that. And what this does is actually just sort of almost kind of strip away that thought that's built upon thought and say, well, what's really important here? What can you control and what can't you control? And at a time like this, at the moment, you know, it's really important for us as employers to think we can only do so much, or as members of family, we can only do so much to look after our employees or our parents. Beyond that, it's up to them what they do. And as long as we're doing everything we can within our power to help people, we can just accept that what's going on outside of that is just, there's just a bit of madness going on, and we don't know what's going to happen. And that can be sort of scary, that can be fearful, but it also can be quite a release, because suddenly we're at this point where, despite all of our best efforts to keep our businesses together and keep doing what we do, that might not be within our gift. It might be beyond us. And so we can keep doing what we try and do, but we can start planning about, well, what else might come next. And yeah, so I've sort of skipped kind of from what it means to me to what's happening in the coronavirus.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I like that way you took it.
But as Martin said, also just the way it helps us as a business is it's incredible for communication, because you know, how many times we sort of sat around a board meeting or a client meeting and we start to get a sense that someone thinks something. As Martin was saying earlier, you know, you see a reaction from someone, so you assume they're thinking a certain thing. Someone frowns and you think, oh, they didn't like that idea. Maybe they don't like us. Maybe we're not going to get this job, you know. And actually, they might have just remembered something they need to do that evening that they're annoyed about. And it's completely irrelevant, but we build that thinking in our mind, and it affects the way we then carry ourselves through the rest of that meeting. So what it's really good at doing is recognizing that everyone around that table, everyone listening to this webinar now, you know, we don't all have the same thoughts. All of us are interpreting what we're seeing and hearing in a completely different way. And so it's really important to check in on your understanding of a situation with someone else. And you know, it's completely changed the way that we speak to each other, the way that we deal with each other. You know, we actually, when someone's speaking in a board meeting, people listen to them and pause until they reply, rather than trying to talk over them, because they really want to understand what that person is talking about and thinking about. If we've got a strong opinion about something, rather than sort of carrying that out of the meeting and getting angry about it, you just say, I'm seeing this like this. Is that how you're seeing it? And just checking in with what other people are actually hearing, saying, no, I'm not getting that at all. So it's really quite liberating in that respect. And with dealing with employees, it's great as well, because you can just have much better conversations in one-to-ones and everyday sort of situations, because you're naturally more curious about what's going on in their mind and why they're behaving in a certain way, rather than thinking they're behaving in that way, that means this. You actually ask them, like, well, I've noticed this, you've been doing this, is everything okay? And it's yeah, hugely beneficial for that level of communication.
Can I just add to that? That was really great, Rob, amazing. And but the key point there is, when we accept that we're all creating our own reality and they're entirely different, of course, we need to understand other people, rather than being in my world and thinking the whole world should operate from my head and see it the way I do. All of a sudden I go, well, it's only my reality. Rob might have a totally different reality, which he's totally justified in having. So I need to accept that he's going to see the world differently. And I need to get inside his head to really get where he's coming from. And the more that we do that, the more we end up in better relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really well put, Rob. I think that's really good. It's well articulated of how paying attention to the mind can really kind of, you know, improve your ability to listen and kind of make good decisions. I'm just conscious of the time. We've just got like 2 or 3 minutes left. Any final thoughts, Martin? I was going to direct people to your QOMI, as you call it, the quality of mind indicator. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, just what was I going to say? I mean, if you're interested in this conversation, there's a number of things you could do. We've got a YouTube channel with few video clips on it. The YouTube channel is the Pragma Group. We've got this free online quality of mind indicator, which is a self-assessment that gives you back a 30-page document that gives you some insight into the quality of your own mind right now, and gives you something to read to reflect on what we've been talking about here. And the other thing, you know, if you like what we're talking about here, you know, feel free to reach out. We've got yeah, that's it there. We've got, you know, we're doing in-house webinars on this stuff like we've just done here. We're doing that inside your company if you want to help people reflect on their own thinking. And we do programs as well on it. So if you're interested, just reach out for a chat, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to underscore, like, it's not that, like, most of the time at Agency Hackers, you're hearing from other agency leaders, and it's only sort of fairly rare that it's fairly rare that I get, you know, like people who work with agencies. And I've had Martin speak a few times actually, because it's really game changing what he can do for you. So that's why I'm just keen, if you are interested in looking at the way you think and looking at the way you operate, and really kind of going deeper on the quality of mind, then it is a good person to talk to. So it's the Pragma Group you want to have a look for, and you can see the link on the Headtrash website as well. But I'm gonna leave it there. We've got in fact, Carl, could we have a little final peep at what you've been up to? Just to let you know, at 2 o'clock we're speaking to Rory Sutherland, the vice chairman of Ogilvy. Really cool guy. He writes in the Spectator quite a lot. We're going to be asking him about the power of unconventional thinking, because he's written a book on that, which is really good. And then at 3:30, we're talking to Kelly Molson, who runs Rubber Cheese, and she is talking about how you sort of lead a business when you're personally not okay. So Kelly's been through, she's you know, had some miscarriages, and she's going to be talking about how you lead people when you just don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning. So that'd be interesting as well. Wow. Haha. I love it. Look at that roller coaster.
Yeah, brilliant. Love the roller coaster. Yeah, enjoy the ride, guys, is the final thing I'd say. Relax, don't hang on. Don't hang on, or don't get stressed. Just go with it.
Cool.
Put your hands up high.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Martin. I really appreciate that. And thanks, Carl, for your great illo. I'll put that on the website as well in case anyone wants a little memento.